Good morning, MedTubers. Today we're talking a little bit about control of error and correcting your child in a lesson. Those two things kind of go hand in hand, and so we're going to talk a little bit about correcting your child in a lesson, and then we'll discuss what to do instead. So first we're going to read a little bit from Montessori herself, so we can kind of see where she was when she developed these principles. This first bit that I'm going to read is from the Montessori Method. This is one of many, many covers. I say many, there may be like 3 or 4. I don't know. Anyway, so you can look for this cover, but it might not be this cover. But it is Montessori's own writing. It's her, she's the author of this book. It's not just someone else talking about her philosophy. And it's called the Montessori Method. So on page 226, in case you have it or want to look at it, I'm just going to read a little passage and then I'm going to skip over to the next page. And she's talking here about a teacher who's giving a lesson and then the child makes a mistake and what to do. Let's see. So the child will point to the object with his finger and the teacher will know that he has made the desired association. He's called blue, blue. And he's called red, red. But if he has not done this, that is, if he makes a mistake, she must not correct him, but must suspend her lesson to take it up another day. Indeed, why correct him? If the child has not succeeded in associating the name with the object, the only way in which to succeed would be to repeat both the action and the sense stimuli and the name. In other words, to repeat the lesson. But when the child has failed, we should know that he was not at that instant ready for the psychic association which we wished to provoke in him, and we must therefore choose another moment. I know that's kind of a lot, and her wording is a little outdated. So let's talk about it for a second. What she's saying is that he wasn't mentally prepared to make that association. Either he hasn't internalized it to know it, or he just wasn't prepared to recall that information at that moment. And that's okay. We're not going to correct him because he just wasn't ready. It's not a matter of correcting something that's wrong. It's a matter of waiting until his brain and his body are working together to be ready for that lesson. So we're not going to correct him. We're not going to say, no, this is blue. Or we're not going to say that's wrong, right? We're repeating the lesson. And in my Montessori training, and I'm sure if you're watching and you have received training as well, you've learned that you go back to the first period of a 3-period lesson, which is to name the object, which is basically repeating the lesson, right? That's exactly what she's saying to do. But she's going one step further, and she's saying that we don't just repeat the lesson, we repeat it at a different time. Because at this moment, this child is obviously not ready to do this job. Whether it's just that he doesn't know it yet and he needs more practice, or if it's just that he knows it but his brain is focused on something else. Okay, we all have those moments where we type and type, or we work with a puzzle and we just realize that our brain just can't focus on what we're doing right now. That's okay. We take a break, we do something else, we come back. Why wouldn't we give a child that same opportunity? We should. So that's what she's saying. Okay, so next I just want to expand on that a little bit because she talks more about the reason for that. In dealing with normal children, we have to remember that here she has gone from working with children in a psychiatric ward who are technically deficient in a myriad ways to working with children who are normal, developmentally speaking. They are capable of learning these things and functioning as normal citizens. So when she says normal children, she literally means not in a psychiatric ward. Okay, so I want to make that distinction because the word normal can be a little trigger for some people. So in this instance, she's using it accurately, as scientists tend to do. In dealing with normal children, we must await this spontaneous investigation of the surroundings, or, as I like to call it, this voluntary explosion of the exploring spirit. In such cases, the children experience a joy at each fresh discovery. They are conscious of a sense of dignity and satisfaction, which encourages them to seek for new sensations from their environment and to make themselves spontaneous observers. She's saying that when we stop our lesson and we pick it up at another time when that child is ready, we are setting him up for success. We are setting him up for that feeling of dignity and pride and, what does she say? Dignity and satisfaction. That he has accomplished the goal of this lesson without our interruption. Everything Montessori designed, as far as her method, is for us to set children up for success. We want to give them the tools, we want to give them the encouragement, we want to give them the environment to be successful. That's why on this tray, everything they need to accomplish this job is right there, so that they can be successful without having to seek external assistance or external approval to accomplish that task. They don't have to come to me and say, where's the spoon? They don't have to come to me and request the spoon. It's there, it's ready for them to use. Set them up for success. And she's doing the same thing with control of error and not correcting a child. She's setting them up for the success of that satisfaction when they did it. They didn't do it and then get corrected. They did it themselves. So that's what she's setting them up for. Okay, so that's a little bit about not interrupting a lesson to correct a child. But if we don't do that, how do they know that they've made a mistake when they're practicing on their own? That's where we have control of error. It's a common phrase that you will hear in Montessori reading, books, classrooms, maybe not classrooms, but amongst the teachers. So what does control of error look like? It's a way for a child to assess their own success. They don't have to come to me as the teacher and say, did I do this right? They don't have to wait for me to approve what they've done. They can look at it themselves and make a judgment on their own. That's what we want. We want children to grow up learning to make judgments on their own, to not validate themselves by everyone else in their environment. That's what we want. So that's what control of error does. It allows them to do that autonomously. For example, I have this food sorting job, and it is coupled with all of these food choices. You can see there are several different colors here. They coincide quite nicely with the colors on this plate. This is the control of error. They sort things around the plate, and then they can look at everything they've stacked here next to the red square and see if it's red. If it's red, then they've done this job correctly. If they have one that's not red, they take it out and they resort it. Next, let's talk about a different kind of control of error. So this job, the control of error, can also be used backwards for children doing this job the first time. So the first time a child does this job, it's a matching work. So the control of error, which is this card, gets put down first. They line the rug with this card, and then they match the pieces to it. Is that the same? No, it's not. Is this the same? Yes, it is. And so on with the inside of the fruit, right? For an older child who's done this many times and is doing it accurately and quickly, I would go to them and I would challenge them to do these cards first. Lay out all of the whole pieces, match the inside, and then use this to check your work. This becomes the control of error, just by doing it backwards, just by adding that challenge to a child who's already done this job and has mastered it in the first way. It's called a second presentation, and it's a common use of a control of error in a classroom. Let's talk about some other control of errors, because each material is different, and depending on the skill of the student, the control of error is going to be different. For example, the one that we just did. So this is a job that we have on our shelf that's all of these cards that all start with the same letter. So this is for letter recognition. We're practicing in this particular envelope. Sorry, I gotta spin these around because it bugs me. Anyway, so these are all sounds, right? This envelope is a little bit different because there's only sounds in it. However, sometimes they get mixed up. right? So after they set these things out on the rug and they say rocks, rattle, saw. Okay, obviously not right? So this would be in their work, and maybe they're going along and they say, what is this? And I would say saw, and they would say saw. That doesn't fit, and I would say you're right. Let's put it where it belongs. Or they would go through and they wouldn't notice, right? That's also a possibility. So let's say they go through and they don't notice. They've got this saw in here, rocket, rugs, and so on, okay? They get to the end and they have all of these things on their rug spread out. And they've got their little They flip all of these over and they can match the in this word with the at the top of the rug. They can also match the in this word with rocket, rocks, raspberries, and so on until they get to saw. Now they've gotten to saw and they have all these words that are laid out on their rug, and they can see again that and s, they sound different, but they also look different. If they don't hear the difference, maybe they're gonna see the difference. If they don't see the difference and they don't hear the difference, they're obviously not ready for this skill. And that's okay, I'm gonna let them practice it, but I'm not gonna come over and I'm not gonna say, oh, that's wrong. I'm gonna let it go. Because later, as their brain defines these sounds, next time or 5 times from now when they do this job, they'll get it. So, S would be moved after they see all of these ers. Last, I want to show you one quick example of another control of error, and then we'll read our last part from Montessori's other book. So in the reading program that I use, the California Phonetic Reading Program, which I will plug every chance I get, and I cannot say enough good things about it, so sorry if you're tired of hearing about it, except I'm not sorry. The California Phonetic Reading Program is what I use, and one of the steps in that the materials for that program is that they have these picture cards. This is a nut. And this card is used at one of the very first jobs to practice the sound. Nut, right? And bun, bun, okay? So they've set this out, and they've done this material, or these particular words, one other time, and they've done it with the movable alphabet. So they've put this card down, and they've taken the movable alphabet, and they've spelled this word. Then they turn it over and they've checked their work. So they have their written word next to it on the rug, and they check, does my word look like this word? It is color coded. The letters in my alphabet are red, blue, and red. So it will look the same. Which means that when they check their work, they don't have to come and ask me, did I do this right? They make that choice on their own. So they've already done that. The next thing that they have is an actual word. And again, they do this with the movable alphabet, and they flip it over. They do this, they set them all out, and they find the word cards that go with it. They put the word card here instead of the movable alphabet, and they do the same thing. They flip this over and they check their work. They check their own work. I do not check it for them. I do not grade them. I do not tell them it's good. I do not tell them how good it is. I don't tell them it's 85% good or 75% good. I do not authoritate my opinion of their work because they have corrected it and checked it on their own. If they turn this over, or if they turn this over and it doesn't match, they know they've made a mistake. They either fix it because they want to, or they don't because they just don't care right now, and they fix it later, the next time they do this job. That's okay. We all have days like that. There's nothing wrong with them also having a day like that. So I'm not worried about it. But they make their own discoveries of what they've done right and wrong. That's the idea behind control of error. They make their own discoveries of mistakes, and then they fix them on their own. We as adults in our jobs and in our lives, we discover our own mistakes, and then we either choose to fix them and learn from them, or we choose to ignore them. That's okay too. That's our prerogative as an adult and as a contributing member of society, and as the controller of our own lives. Children deserve the same respect. And I know it sounds ridiculous because we're just talking about preschool work, but that's where it starts. Learning that I have the right to decide my own mistakes and learn from them when and if I choose to is something that I learned very late in life. And I don't want my children or your children to have to learn that lesson late in life. If they learn it early, they're going to be stronger and more confident contributing members of society. So that's a whole other thing. That's way more about control of error than you were expecting, right? That's how I roll. All right, so let's read a little bit about Montessori's notes before we sign off. We're reading from Discovery of the Child, which is another book by Montessori herself. And I am on page 103, in case you want to find it. The control of error through the material makes a child use his reason, critical faculty, and his ever-increasing capacity for drawing distinctions. In this way, a child's mind is conditioned to correct his errors even when these are not material or apparent to the senses. By creating a control of error that he can check in every material that you possibly can, you're training his brain to look for those mistakes. So that when there is no control of error, because let's face it, in life we have no control of error. When he gets to that point where control of error is no longer apparent in his environment, his brain is already trained to seek out the mistakes that he has made and make them right. Can you imagine if every adult we knew had that ability to seek out their own mistakes and make them right? It would be a wildly different universe that we live in. And that is my goal for the future, a wildly different universe. And it all starts right here, in our Montessori classroom, in our homes, in our lives, in our hearts, as parents and caregivers and teachers. One little note before we go. Control of error to a lot of people is equated to cheating, and I just want to touch on that for a moment. One thing that stuck with me in my Montessori training was that children can't cheat. Cheating is devious and usually is defined by an unfair advantage. If every single child has a control of error available to them and they use it to complete the job, they're not cheating. They're utilizing the resources that we have literally given them to find the answers and to learn the answers. Is using a dictionary cheating? No, it's a resource, it's a tool. And that's what this is. It's a resource and a tool for them to learn the skills that they need to learn on their own without our intervention. Because that is what we do in our Montessori classroom and in our Montessori philosophy. We create an environment where they can be independent and do as much as humanly possible without our intervention, so that they can practice it, so that when they become an adult, they can still do it without our intervention. All right, so that's a little bit about control of error and correcting mistakes and wild philosophy on our future. So I hope that it's helped you a little bit. I hope that you've gained a little bit of insight into what you might want to change on your shelf or what you might already be doing that's right on track. Either way, if you'd like to leave us a comment, go ahead and drop it below. And as always, subscribe to our channel so that you can get notifications when we post new videos. We'll see you next time.